The Brooks Ghost Max was one of many people's surprise running shoe of the year, but does it really live up to the hype? Let's break it down. What's up everyone, it's Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, Rad Dad Bod TV. Welcome to another review on my channel. Now, before we dive into anything, I do want to say, full disclosure, I did get this shoe for free through my association with my local running store, UtahRUN. I'm actually the social media manager, specifically their TikTok administrator, so I do most of their content on TikTok. Therefore, I often get shoes so that I can create content for their brand. That being said, neither UtahRUN nor Brooks actually gets to see these reviews before I film or post them, and they get no input on what I actually say in these. All of the thoughts are my own. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. Quick specs breakdown of the shoe. It is a 38mm stack in the heel and a 32mm stack in the forefoot for a 6mm heel to toe drop. The midsole foam itself is a DNA Loft V2 foam, which, if you're familiar with Brooks, is the same foam that is used in the Brooks Ghost Standard Edition. So this is not supposed to be their softest foam. In fact, I would say it's probably their second softest of their daily trainer models, because they also have DNA Loft V3, which is most commonly used in the glycerin. The outsole has plenty of coverage, and they use what they call segmented crash pads, which I believe are these little kind of sections of the outsole itself. And the reason why they do that, or they say they do that, is to promote good landing regardless of your foot strike. The upper uses a refined 3D printed mesh. As you can see here, it's kind of got that dual layer as many shoes have nowadays. Now the tongue of the upper is not gusseted, but it is sewn in there at the bottom, but so long as you have it secured to the laces, it seems to do a good job. As far as weight of the shoe, it comes in at 10.1 ounces, at least in a men's size 9. And so this is going to be on the heavier side, but again, we're dealing with a max cushion daily trainer, so you would expect it to be a little bit heavier. As far as overall sizing goes, this shoe fits true to size. I wear a 10.5 and do wear a 10.5 in the Brooks Ghost Max, which is nice to see, as I personally have had a little bit of sizing inconsistency with the brand. As far as overall fit, I would say that this shoe fits wider than any Brooks model that I have tried on before. Brooks historically runs a little bit narrow, so I would say for the most part it fits pretty average with a slightly wider toe box. In summary, I would say if you wear a 10.5, you're going to be a 10.5 in the Brooks Ghost Max. Select the size that you most frequently wear in running shoes. From a pricing standpoint, this shoe comes in at $150, which is pretty average for a max cushion running shoe. More often than not, max cushion running shoes are going to have some kind of premium plush elements, and you see that in the upper as far as kind of the comfort around the heel, as well as just that plush foot or midsole underfoot. Now let's talk about likes and dislikes. As far as likes go, the one thing that I really love about the shoe is that Brooks took some risks. This shoe does not run like a traditional Brooks model. Most Brooks running shoes are going to be a high heel to toe drop. This is a mid heel to toe drop with a 6mm drop. And that, again, I really love. I typically prefer like a 5 to 6 drop anyway, so it's right in my sweet spot, and it's nice to see the brand trying some new things coming into the new year. I think Brooks took a calculated risk when creating this shoe, and I think they did it for stability reasons, not necessarily for responsive reasons. But this shoe, the midsole, the DNA Loft V2, is a lot more responsive than most max cushion shoes. When I compared this to something like the Saucony Triumph 21 or even the Hoka Clifton 9, the midsole compound here just seems to give a little bit more bounce or a little bit more return. While you're not going to find me running 400-meter repeats in the Brooks Ghost Max, I think it's totally reasonable to do maybe a progression run or even just a long run with some pickups at the end. I've heard some people call the Brooks Ghost Max kind of the Clifton Killer because it's a little bit more responsive than most max cushion shoes. And that's something that's lacked in that market for those who feel the need to wear a max cushion shoe. They want something with a little bit more pop. So this kind of checks that box, which was very surprising for me. They could have just as easily gone with that nitrogen infused DNA Loft V3 foam that they use in the glycerin, which is going to be a little bit more soft, a little bit more plush. And I think it was the right move to go with a little bit denser of a midsole. Other things that I liked, they have this really strong heel counter here, which really kind of keeps you locked into the shoe. Oftentimes I have to use a runner's knot, and you can see that I have not laced this to do so. Overall, I just think it's a really, really solid shoe. Now, what about dislikes? So I totally understand that max cushion shoes oftentimes have these overly plush elements because they have kind of overall comfort in mind when being created, but I think that Brooks may have overdone it a little bit on the upper. The tongue is probably a little bit more plush than it needs to be, and when compared to the rest of the upper, at least here in the midfoot and forefoot, it just kind of stands out on its own, especially as it's not gusseted at all. And that same thing is true as you kind of come here along the heel counter and the ankle counter. It's very, very soft, but it almost feels a little bit bulky. The 3D printed mesh upper was supposed to provide a lot of comfort and breathability, and while I have no complaints from a comfort standpoint, it doesn't rub, it sits really nice on the foot, I do feel like my feet almost feel like they're in a little bit of a boot. They're almost kind of constricted in this upper, so I would have liked a little bit more breathability in the shoe overall. Last thing I'll say that I wish was a little bit different is I do wish that the fit in the midfoot was just a little bit wider still. And I think part of why my foot felt a little bit almost suffocated in the shoe, even from a breathability standpoint, all of those things, was just because it just fits really, really kind of tight around the foot. And when I'm running on a max cushion shoe, when I'm running kind of on that recovery run day, I want my foot to be able to breathe a little bit more. At the end of the day, who's the Brooks Ghost Max built for? The Brooks Ghost Max is obviously built as a competitor to the Hoka Clifton. Now, a couple of things I think that it does really, really well is it gives you some really great stability. It really gives you some really good lockdown. So if you're looking for a natural competitor to the Clifton as far as a max cushion shoe that gives you really good stability, comfort, lockdown, I think they checked all of those boxes. What may surprise some people though is that the Clifton is over an ounce lighter than the Brooks Ghost Max. And when I hold them in hand here and when I wear them on foot, that does become noticeable. Now, I'm not going to say one is necessarily better than the other because I think that they both have their place and it just depends on what you're looking for. For example, if your legs are really, really beat up and you want something that's going to be kind of more supportive, a little bit softer, you might go with the Clifton. But if you want something that's still going to allow you to get some decent turnover and have a little bit more responsiveness in your shoes, then the Brooks Ghost Max is going to be your move. I think the Brooks Ghost Max is an excellent option for a max cushion daily trainer. If you do a lot of walking, if you're on your feet for long periods of time during the day, Brooks Ghost Max is one of those shoes that you should check out and not just stick with the Hoka Clifton, Hoka Bondi, which is what a lot of people are going for because they've been blowing up on social media. As far as how I would use this shoe in a rotation, the irony of this shoe is it's so different than other Brooks models that it's hard to kind of pair it with another pair of Brooks. So if I were to build a rotation, maybe a 2-3 shoe rotation around this, I might look at something like the Saucony Kinvara 14 as more of my up-tempo, maybe tempo, even repeat shoe, or even just kind of my lightweight daily trainer compared to my max cushion daily trainer. Then if I were looking for a race day option, the Hoka Rocket X2 actually is going to have kind of a similar setup a little bit as far as heel to toe drop and then just kind of that roll through. So if you're looking for a race day shoe that pairs nicely with the Brooks Ghost Max, Hoka Rocket X2 may be your move as far as kind of stability and overall feel goes. All in all, I think Brooks did an excellent job and I'm excited to see what they do for the Brooks Ghost Max 2 that's coming out now in 2024. What I've heard so far is they have upgraded the foam to that DNA Loft V3, kind of nitrogen infused, so it should be almost a little bit softer, but hopefully it doesn't lose any of that responsiveness. But for the most part, I think Brooks developed a winner in 2023. The Brooks Ghost Max is an excellent max cushion shoe. You can find this shoe at UtahRUN.com, on Brooks's website, obviously, or if you live here locally, come into UtahRUN in American Fork and check it out, try it on foot. As always, thanks again for sticking around to the end of the video. If you like what you saw today and you want to see more running shoe reviews, then go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and come back next time where we review the Hoka Mach X.